breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by John Bollman. He does great work with his work over at Baseball with Bollman, along with RotoWire. He's going to be joining me. We're going to be taking a look at things going into the summer months in baseball, some of the teams that he feels are getting a little bit hot and cold as well, and then we're going to break down some games for Saturday. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this baseball Saturday as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but everything is powered by Edge Boost. Over at Edge Boost, they're making sure that bettors are able to access their funds whenever and wherever. It is a account that can be used for all gambling transactions, and when you go to edgeboost.bet, utilize the promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in baseball on Friday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
While there were some dominant pitching performances on Friday, you also saw 22 runs scored by a team. The Orioles got down 6-0 against the Tampa Bay Rays, 22-8. They get the job done here, as for the Tampa Bay Rays, they were able to get to Tomoyuki Sugano. Josh Lowe, 5th home run of the campaign. Jonathan Aranda, his 9th home run of the season. Then Brandon Lau gets loud for his 17th home run of the season, as Sugano gives up those 3 bombs. 7 runs in total over the course of 5 innings. Bullpen from there was actually solid. Keegan Aiken gives up a run in an inning. Cade Stoward, he was able to come in and he gave 2 scoreless innings to Anthony Dominguez, a scoreless inning of his own. And then for the Orioles, they erupted as well, as off of Eric Orze, you had Gary Sanchez get his 4th home run of the campaign. Off of Jose Calabredo, position player, Kobe Mayo gets his first home run of the campaign, and then you had Gunnar Henderson get his 9th home run of the season, and Jackson Holiday, 10th home run of the season, as he was able to go deep off of the reliever and Paul Gervisi. He comes in, he gives up his home run in his 3rd of an inning of work. Ryan Pepiot, not long for this game. He gets 5 outs, gives up 4 runs, all of which were earned. Mason Montgomery from there gives up a run in 1 1/3 innings. Eric Orze, 3 runs allowed in his 2 innings. Edwin Uceta, 3 runs allowed in his 2/3 of an inning. Forrest Woodley, 4 runs, 2 of which were earned in his inning. And Jose Calabredo, he gives up 6 runs over the course of an inning of work. And for the Cincinnati Reds, they were on to an 8-1 win against the San Diego Padres, as Dylan Cease just continues to be rough in general. 4 runs, 3 of which were earned, give it up in his 4 innings of work, as it was a 3 home run game for Spencer Steer. He got them all in the first 5 innings. He goes deep for home runs number 7 and 8 off of Mr. Dylan Cease, and then from there he's able to get his 9th home run of the season. That comes off of Yuki Matsui, and for Matsui, he gave up 4 runs in his inning of work. Meanwhile, you did have Sean Reynolds come in. He was able to give you a scoreless inning, and you did have David Morgan be able to supply 2 scoreless innings as well for the Cincinnati Reds. You did have Nick Martinez take a no-hitter into the 9th inning. He does give up a hit and 1 run in 8 innings before you had Taylor Rogers come in and get the final out of the game, but very good performance there. Great performance by Sonny Gray. 5-0, the St. Louis Cardinals get it done on the road against the Cleveland Guardians. As for Sonny Gray, he allows 1 hit in his complete game, 11 strikeouts, 89 pitches. Very, very nice. And for St. Louis, pair of home runs off of the starter in Luis Ortiz, as you had Mr. Pedro Baez get his 6th home run in the campaign, Alec Burleson his 10th. For Ortiz, gives up 4 runs in his 7 innings of work, including those 2 bombs. Eric Zabrowski, a scoreless inning of the bullpen. Jacob Judas, he allows a run in his inning of work, but for St. Louis, all of a sudden 45-38. They're looking to be able to keep track in that NL Central, and in the NL Central, you did see the Brewers get the job done 10-6 over the Colorado Rockies. Rockies starting to score some runs on the road, but boy oh boy did they give them up here. Kyle Freeland, 6 runs allowed over the course of 4 innings. From there, you had Jimmy Harrigan get 5 outs out of the bullpen, giving up an unearned run. Ryan Rollison, 2 runs allowed in 1 1/3 innings. And Jake Bird, he gives the Bird with a run, give it up in an inning. And for the Brewers, going deep off of Mr. Kyle Freeland, Jackson Trio, 13th home run on the campaign. For the Brewers, Jose Quintana experienced some regression, giving up 4 runs in his 5 2/3 innings, and Jerry Koenig, 2 runs allowed in a 1/3 of an inning. But Nick Mears, 1 1/3 innings scoreless. Abner Uribe, pair of outs out of the bullpen scoreless, and Grant Anderson able to polish things off with a scoreless inning. For the Boston Red Sox, things have been a little bit rough with their offense recently as they go scoreless, 9-0. The Blue Jays get the job done. Jose Barrios, 7 scoreless innings. Nick Sandlin, Paxton Schultz, they both end a scoreless inning, and no home runs for the Blue Jays, but they strand 13 men on base and go 7 of 17 with men in scoring position, 16 total hits. Brian Bayo gives up 3 runs over the course of 6 innings, and then Brendan Bernardino, 4 runs allowed in his inning of work. Luis Guerrero, he gets a out of the bullpen, gives up 2 runs. Orde Alcala, pair of outs out of the bullpen, scoreless, and then Mr. Nate Eaton, the backup third baseman, was able to end a scoreless inning. So yay verily there, and yay verily for the Giants snapping their losing streak as they got swept by the Miami Marlins, but they get the job done here 3-1 over the Chicago White Sox. For Landon Roop gives up an unearned run in his 5 1/3 innings. Willie Adames with his 12th error of the season. He's been about as useful as a poopy flavored lollipop for the team, but he did have Camilo Duvall, Tyler Rogers, Randy Rodriguez, all ended scoreless inning, and Ryan Walker, a pair of outs out of the bullpen, scoreless. For Aaron Civale, he gave up 1 run over the course of 4 innings, and then Tyler Alexander, 2 runs allowed over the course of 3 innings, and then you had Tyler Gilbert along Dan Altavia, both be able to end a scoreless inning as well. For the Seattle Mariners, it took them 12 innings to get the job done against the Walker Texas Rangers, 7-6 final for the Rangers. Now 28 overs, 53 unders, and a push in just 11 of their 40 games at home go over, but this one was quite overwhelming as Logan Gilbert gives up 4 runs over the course of 5 1/3 innings, including a home run to Corey Seager, 8th home run on the campaign, and for Nathan Eovaldi, first started off the injured list, not long for this game, 3 runs allowed over the course of his 3 innings of work, and then it was piecemeal from the bullpen from there as he had for the Texas Rangers, Jacob Webb give up a run in his 2 innings of work. Cole Winn gives up a run in an inning. Hobie Milner, Chris Martin, Robert Garcia all end a scoreless inning, and then Luke Jackson gives up an unearned run in his 2 innings of work in extras, and then Sean Armstrong an unearned run in the 12th inning for the Texas Rangers. 3 of 20 with men in scoring position. Seattle 4 of 23 as out of their bullpen. You had Carlos Vargas led a scoreless inning. James Spire, he gives up a run in a 1/3 of an inning. Casey Lugumina, 4th out of the bullpen, scoreless. Matt Brash, Andres Munoz, they both come in for an inning. Munoz gives up an unearned run in extras, but Edward Bazardo pitches scoreless 11th and 12th innings to be able to get that to the window. For the Houston Astros, they get to the window. They take down the Chicago Cubs. This by a count of 7-4 as Cade Horton, well, he earned a who. He earned a who of 7 runs in 4 innings, including a pair of bombs. Yanier Diaz, 10th home run season, and Cade Smith, he's able to get his 6th home run on the campaign. Chris Flexen, really good in long relief, 4 scoreless innings, and Nico Warner, he gets his 2nd home run of the season. That comes off of Mr. Brandon Walter, who gives up that home run in his 6 innings of work. Caleb Ort, 2 runs allowed in a 1/3 of an inning. Bennett Sosa, 1 2/3 innings, he allows a run. Steve Okert, Josh Hader, they combine for 3 outs out of the bullpen to be able to get the job done there. If you had this under, this was a very, very rough under as the Dodgers have been the best over team in all of baseball. 47 overs, 34 unders, and 2 pushes. 5-4 the final, but this score was 5-4 in the top of the 5th inning, and as a matter of fact, it was 4-3 after 2 innings as for the LA Dodgers, you had in this one Shohei Ohtani getting a leadoff home run off of Noah Cameron, 29th home run on the campaign, and then Cameron also gives one up to Max Muncy, 13th home run of the season. Cameron gives up 5 runs in 4 innings, and then from there the bullpen was solid. Taylor Clark, Steven Cruz combined for 3 scoreless innings. Anel Zerpa, Lucas Hursedge, they both give you a scoreless inning as well as the Royals. They leave 11 men on base as Dustin May, it was Mayday, giving up 4 runs in 4 innings, including a home run to Bobby Witt Jr., 11th home run on the campaign, but from there the bullpen did their job. Lou Trevino, Anthony Banda combined for 2 scoreless innings. Alex Vesia, Taylor Scott, along with Luis Garcia, they're all able to end a scoreless inning as well. You're able to get quite a few scoreless innings out of the Minnesota Twins. They take it to the Detroit Tigers, this by a count of 4-1. As for the Twinkies, David Fessa have a fiesta, 5 2/3 innings scoreless. Griffin Jackson does allow a run in his inning of work, but Louis Varland, Yohan Duran, both lend a scoreless inning, and Danny Kalum, and out of the bullpen scoreless, and Byron Buxton does go deep off of Sawyer Gibson Long, his 18th home run of the campaign for the Detroit Tigers. Gibson Long gives up 3 runs in 5 1/3 innings, and you did have 2 scoreless innings out of the bullpen from Mr. Dylan Smith. And then Brant Herter, he came in, he did not get an out, but he allowed a hit and a walk, so there was that. And then Carlos Hernandez, he gets 5 outs out of the bullpen, he does allow a run along the way. And there were a lot of scoreless innings thrown by the New York Yankees. How about them taking it to the Athletics, this by a count of 3-0, as for the A's, they had Mitch Pence give up 3 runs, 2 of which were earned in 5 innings, did allow a home run to Jazz Chisholm, his 12th home run on the campaign. Will Warren walked the bases loaded in the first inning, but got out of that, and then he would lend 5 scoreless innings. Fernando Cruz, Luke Weaver, Weaver, Devin Williams, Tim Hill, they all lend a scoreless inning. And for the Athletics, you had Sean Newcomb come in. He was able to give 3 scoreless innings. For the New York Metropolitans, they gave a rough performance against the Pittsburgh Pirates. 9-1 the final. Love the last name of Dave Peterson. Don't love the fact they gave up 5 runs in 4 2/3 innings. And Blade Tidwell gave up a home run, 4 runs in total in 3 1/3 innings, as Brian Reynolds, his 9th home run of the campaign. For Mitch Keller, gave up a solo home run to Juan Soto, his 20th home run of the season, but that's all that he would give up in 5 1/3 innings. Isaac Madsen, Genesis Cabrera both give you 4 outs out of the bullpen scoreless, and Chase Shogert, he was able to land a scoreless inning as well. This for a Pirates team that has been relatively rough in terms of scoring runs thus far this season, and this was relatively rough for the Atlanta Braves. They got down 11-0 in the top of the 3rd inning against Philadelphia Phillies. I am recording this a little bit in advance, midnight Eastern time. Currently it's 11-0 on the bottom of the 7th, but we know how this one is going to conclude, as Mick Abel was supposed to make the start. He was listed as a guy that was supposed to start, but never threw a pitch. Tanner Banks comes in for 2 scoreless innings. Taijuan Walker, he gives you 2 scoreless innings. And then they went to Alan Rangel. He has come in thus far for 2 2/3 innings and has kept it scoreless. And for the Philadelphia Phillies, they were able to get some home runs in this one, as you had Trey Turner down for what? Get his 10th home run in the campaign. That comes out for Bryce Elder. Elder also gives one up to Nick Castellanos, his 9th home run of the season. Then Elder, well, he looked elderly, giving it up to Otto Kemp, his 1st home run of the campaign, and then Kyle Schwarber off of Michael Peterson, great name, his 25th home run of the campaign. For the Atlanta Braves, Elder gives up 10 runs, 9 of which were earned in 2 innings, including those 3 bombs. Peterson comes in for 2 2/3 innings. He allows a run along the way. Rafael Montero is giving you a scoreless inning, and Daniel De Los Santos 1 1/3 inning scoreless as well. The Miami Marlins make it 4 straight wins on the road. They take down the Arizona Diamondbacks by count of 9-8. This was not necessarily the length that they wanted out of Erie Perez, but getting a little bit better there. 3 runs allowed over the course of 4 1/3 innings. He did allow a home run in this one, as it was home run number 1 of the campaign for Jake McCarthy, and then Alec Thomas would go deep off of Kate Gibson. That was his 4th home run of the campaign. Gibson goes 2/3 of an inning, allows that home run. Ronnie Enriquez gives up a home run as well to Geraldo Perdomo, his 9th of the campaign, as Enriquez goes 1 1/3 innings, allowing that 1 run. Calvin Fauché from there, a pair of outside the bullpen squirrels. Anthony Bender a scoreless inning, and Tyler Phillips tried to blow this game. 3 runs, 2 of which were earned, give it up in the 9th inning, but the Fish had played at a pair of runs themselves in the 9th inning to be able to get the job done, as Taylor Scott come on in relief, gave up 3 runs over the course of 2 innings, including a pair of bombs. Going deep off of him, it was home run number 7 of the campaign for Otto Lopez, and he also had home run 13 of the season earlier on from Kyle Stowers. That came off of Merrill Kelly. Kelly gives up 5 runs, 3 of which were earned over the course of his 5 innings of work, and then you were able to get home run number 2 as well. This came off of Tanner Scott from the young gun and Alberto Hernandez, who's actually been quite solid for the Miami Marlins. You did have Juan Murillo along with Kevin Ginkel come in for an inning for the Diamondbacks, and Murillo gave up a run in an inning, and then out there in Los Angeles, the Washington Nationals just absolutely go scorched earth on the LA Angels. 15-9, the final is for Washington. You had Jake Irvin give up 9 runs, 8 of which were earned, including a trio of bombs, and the team still won. Taylor Ward, 20th home run of the season. Joe Adell sets fire to the rain, 18th home run of the season. Nolan Chunal, his 7th home run of the season. From there, Cole Henry, pair of outside the bullpen scoreless. You had Brad Lord say, "Oh Lord," to giving you 1 2/3 innings scoreless. Jose Ferrer, 4 outside the bullpen scoreless, and Zach Brzezinski, a scoreless inning. Jose Soriano, he had a rough go of it as well. He gives up 8 runs over the course of 4 innings, including a home run to Josh Bell, 11th home run season, and the Washington Nationals played 15 runs. That was their lone home run. From there, Connor Brogdon gives up a run in 1 1/3 innings. Hunter Strickland, he gives up 4 runs over the course of an inning. Sam Bachman, he gives up a run in an inning. Hector Neris, unearned run, give it up in his inning, and you had Brock and Rolberg give you a pair of outside the bullpen scoreless. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in Major League Baseball over the last 7 days, things have been quite underwhelming, even though we had some big scores out there on Friday. 49 unders to 37 overs. That's a 57% hit rate to the under. Meanwhile, favorites hitting on the money line at darn near 65%, 57-31 with the late night West Coast games pending. And overall for the season, favorites are hitting at 58.4%, 708 and 505 on the money line. Meanwhile, the under is hitting at 53.2%, 624 unders to 550 overs. So that's what's all happening in baseball right now. That's what we all got on Friday. Now let's turn it forward to Saturday and take a look at what we're getting league-wide with John Bollman. He does great work with Baseball with Bollman and joins me next on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got John Bollman aboard. He does a tremendous job handicapping this great game of baseball over at his website, his podcast. Everything is Baseball with Bollman. I know that he does some great work over on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, John Bollman, spelled Bollman, and then the number 11 all together. And additionally, I know that he's been doing some great work with our good friend Johnny Venezia. Does great work over at RotoWire with college baseball and so much more. And John, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Dog days of baseball right now, so always happy to talk, I guess, the main sport going on right now.
Oh, it absolutely is. And how do you take a look at things going into the summer months with things being so jumbled up and so jam-packed with regards to the wild card races, both in the National League and the American League, and I will say very specifically the American League?
Yeah, this is tough. I mean, this time of the season, it's a little bit before the All-Star break, about a month before the trade deadline. So there's a lot going on right now, especially behind the curtains. A lot of things can happen. A 5-game lead can disappear really fast. A team could pick up one of the top, I guess, trade targets at the deadline. There's so much that could go on right now, so everything's up in the air.
Yep, it certainly is. And are there any of those teams right now that are sort of on the fringe of the playoff picture, that are fighting for a wild card spot that you feel like might be able to get a little bit hot down the line?
The main team I'm looking at there is the Cincinnati Reds. Well, I was high on them before this season. They got off to a bit of a slow start, but they've got a lot of good young talent. Just added Chase Burns to that rotation. They've got a lot of good players, a lot of young players, a lot of players that can, that are streaky. I feel like that team, they've been playing well lately. And that last spot in the NL, especially with the Giants kind of slowing down a bit, the Braves not really taking control of that spot is wide open right now. So I like the Reds there.
Yeah, but I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get in that NL Central as well. John Bollman does a tremendous job breaking down this great game of baseball. Joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And just how do you take a look at that NL Central in general, where it feels like the Cubs have control of that division, but the Brewers are one of those teams that are looking for a playoff spot. And with the Brewers, I do feel like that's a team that I could see regressing a little bit, just because with regards to hard contact numbers, it's been so befuddling what we've seen out of them.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting division. I feel like every year it's always close in that division. The Cubs, they made some moves in the offseason to really compete this year, and they're kind of proving that. The Brewers, it seems like they never have the best team, but they'll always win like 85, 86 games. And I feel like we're headed towards something like that again this year. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but I do feel like they'll definitely be competing. The Cardinals, they've got a solid record. They've been playing well so far this season. I just don't think that they've got enough to stay in that playoff picture. And then, like I said, I like the Reds. They're playing well right now. I think they'll make a couple additions at the deadline. And, they've got a couple additions from their minor league system that they've made as well. So that's a really close division.
Yep, it certainly is. And I do have to ask this about the Milwaukee Brewers as well, because something that I just find to be so strange is, with Milwaukee, it's not really a pitcher-friendly ballpark. It's not really a hitter-friendly ballpark. American Family Field, very much a net-neutral ballpark. I think that that's fair to say. They're averaging about 2 runs per game more on the road rather than at home, with 5.6 runs per game on the road compared to 3.6 at home. What do you make out of something like this, and how do you account for something like this? Or do you just think that this is something that is going to regress to the mean as the season goes along?
Yeah, it's definitely a weird split. The only thing I could think of is maybe, this wouldn't necessarily make sense early in the season, right? But with the weather heating up and the ball traveling, maybe they've been playing more road games lately in the last month or so, and that's kind of caused the ball to fly a bit more as opposed to home where, it's indoors. So, that's really the only thing that I could think of. I would definitely expect, actually at this point, I don't know if that would regress towards the mean, considering all their road games would be outside in this heat. That's just, I think, one of the quirks of baseball right now.
Yep, sometimes you just get things that don't make sense. Like, I think the Mets had a similar split last year as well. So you just have some of those teams from time to time that they don't know what to make out of it, and it is what it is. And you were referring a lot to the NL Central race, and we do have a fun one that's going to be going down for Saturday between Slade Sassoni and Miles Michaelis. That's going to be Guardians versus the St. Louis Cardinals, and I think that this Cardinals team is so interesting. And Michaelis has been one of the toughest guys to gauge because he's not really giving up a lot of hard contact, but he's giving up a ton of contact. And for Slade Sassoni, he's the opposite. Lots of good strikeouts for him, but he's giving up a lot of hard contact, with the Guardians being about a -120. How do you take a look at a spot like this?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because, like I said, I'm not terribly high on the Cardinals. Their problem last year is their pitching and, really their pitching depth. And I wouldn't say they've figured it out this year, but it's been a million times better, more closer to league average than literally one of the worst in the league. But the Guardians, I heard a crazy stat the other day. They've scored something, I don't know the exact number, but it was like 64 runs in June, which is insane if you think about it. Like, I was like, where did they come up with a stat? Why did they say that? And then you think about it, it's like, wow, that's about less than 3 runs a game, which is insane. So they're not hitting right now. Don't like laying any sort of juice on a team that's not hitting like that. Cardinals have been a little bit worse on the road this year, and they're not playing great right now. So I'd probably lean the Cardinals or maybe an under, but I don't totally love a side there.
Yep, I think that that's an interesting game, and with slates to Sony, certainly the strikeout numbers are there. Certainly the home runs allowed have been there as well, unfortunately. And I do think that it's really interesting what we've got for the slate, as we do have one of our good friends, John Bollman. He does great work with Baseball with Bowman, joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And you were referring to teams outscoring. How about the Kansas City Royals averaging less than 2.8 runs per game at home this season? Now, Shohei Ohtani is going to get the start for the Dodgers. As we know, not going to go too long in this game, but right now the Dodgers are about a minus 170 and a total of 9.5. And I'm not sure how you take a look at this sort of situation, but I've just been taking a lot of unders in Royals games, and I'm just going to continue to bet the under until I see otherwise out of this team.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We don't necessarily know how long Otani's going to go, but we know the Dodgers have plenty of pitching to back him up and plenty of guys that can go deep. But there's no way I'm betting on the Royals right now. I mean, last year they were more of a hitting team, and we kind of just expected them to outscore pretty much every team they were facing, and their pitching really wasn't that good. This year it's a bit different. Their pitching has been unbelievable. Last year they had very good starting pitching. It was their bullpen that was more of the problem. This year their bullpen's been unbelievable. They just can't hit. It seems like outside that middle of the lineup, they just don't have many role players that are going, and that's a massive problem, especially in that division where the Tigers are kind of running away with it right now. So I think playing the Dodgers, even though it's on the road, would be a great look there.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And for the Dodgers, laying a run and a half on that run line is certainly something I'm going to be taking a look at, because I do think that they can get to Mr. Seth Lugo. And for the Royals, man, just no offense to be had whatsoever out of them. And I do think that this is another very intriguing one, with the New York Mets throwing Paul Blackburn as about a minus 155 or so favorite. Total on this game is 9. For the Mets, they were able to get online a little bit more in that series against the Atlanta Braves, but this just feels too steep for Paul Blackburn, guy that I've never really been impressed with. And the guy on the flip side, Bailey Falter, I know that he's not like the most incredible pitcher in the world or anything like that, but he's actually had a nice season for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Bailey Falter's been unbelievable this season. He's been pitching really well for a while now. Paul Blackburn, solid pitcher, but it's more about the Mets right now. That's a little juicy with how this team's been playing, but I think they've lost something like 9 of their last 11. They really haven't been playing well, and even on the road all season long, they haven't been playing well. And the Pirates have been a lot better lately. They got off to a really tough start. They're not necessarily good. They're not playing great, but they are playing better right now. I don't like that number with the Mets at all.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that it's gone a little bit too far. And again, I'd probably be willing to lay even with more of a mid-tier starter with the New York Mets. Paul Blackburn not going to be able to do it. So that's my philosophy on that front. And John, I know you were referring to the Reds a little bit earlier as an upside team. You've got Andrew Abbott on the bump going against Randy Vasquez. Now, this is a number that is shooting up quite a bit. I'm seeing right around about minus 150, minus 155 on the Reds with a total of 9.5. Would you be willing to roll with them in the spot against the Padres, albeit it's a Padres team that's throwing out there their worst starter, Mr. Randy Vasquez?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm a big Andrew Abbott fan. I think he's looked very good even these past couple of years. The last couple of years he hasn't had a great ERA necessarily, but I think he's pitched pretty well. He's just struggled with walks and kind of had some games get away from him. But I think he's a very good pitcher. Randy Vasquez, solid. You pretty much know what you'll get out of him. It's a little juicy for me for the Reds, I think. I've got to think about that one. I do think the Reds will win that game, and they've had a very good bullpen this year. Padres haven't been playing their best lately. I would still lean Reds, though. I just don't know if I can make that a play with that number.
Yep, I think that that's a really good look. And with the Reds, I do lean that way as well. But again, yeah, when you get north of minus 150, it becomes a little bit of a roll of the dice there. And we do have ourselves a really nice card on this baseball Saturday. Anything else that's really standing out to you, John, whether that be a game that you're looking to bet or just a game that you want to watch in general?
I think a good look would be the Tigers against the Twins. The Twins have not been playing well lately. I think they've also lost 9 of 11, something like that. They dominated the Mariners yesterday, but that was at home. They head on the road to face a Tigers team that's, one of the best in the league, right there with the Dodgers and the best in the AL. Casey Mize is going. He's been great at home this season, so I think the Tigers are a good look at home as well.
Yep, with the Detroit Tigers, the team has been rolling all season long and has been really impressive what we've seen out of the offense. We knew that the pitching was good from their run last season, but that offense becoming top 6 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game, that has been supreme. So is the information that you supply, John. You are supreme with that regard. You do an amazing job with being able to gauge both the game of Major League Baseball, but I know you did a great job on the college baseball front as well. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, for sure. On X, it's at John Bollman 11. On Instagram, it's at Baseball with Bollman. I usually try to post content both spots, but X is definitely where I have most of my content for sure.
And John does an absolutely incredible job taking a look at this great game of baseball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to John for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this baseball Saturday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by John Bollman, who's doing some great work over at RotoWire. He's doing a great job with the show Baseball with Bollman as well. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to John for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this baseball Saturday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we're going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we're going with the National League games first, then the American League games, any interleague games. Those are going to be at the bottom. That'll keep things all nice, neat, clean, and easy. So let's get things started with game 951, 952 on the card. The New York Mets are on the road against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Bailey Falter hopes to not live up to his name for the Buccos, and Paul Blackburn walks the plank for the Mets. Mets are between minus 145 to minus 157 favorites, and between plus 128 to a plus 133. Then around the Pirates, 9 is the total, over and under both at minus 110. And I know it's a roll of the dice with the Pittsburgh Pirates ever betting on them because it has been a rough offense to say the least, but I'm going to be willing to bank on them. I just really am not feeling great about Paul Blackburn, to say the least. With Paul Blackburn throughout his career, he's just never been a great pitcher. For his career, his ERA is well north of a 4.90. He's been not really getting a lot of swings and misses this year or for his career. 6.6 strikeouts per 9 innings, 3.6 walks per 9 this year. He's made 3 starts, a pair of long relief appearances, and is right now rocking north of a 6 ERA. Coming off of giving up 3 runs in less than 5 innings against the Atlanta Braves, has went 5 innings or fewer in every one of his appearances thus far this season. And I will say, he is backed up by a Mets bullpen that has been very good. Oscar Zobin, along with Jose Buto, have been long guys, giving you sub 3.5 ERA. Reed Garrett has been rock solid in that bullpen along with Edwin Diaz, and this is a bunch that ranks in the top 7 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA, but still, it's a little bit off-putting. You do have a Pirates lineup that has been awful. They are dead last in the National League in terms of runs per game, and on June 27th, entering in the day on Friday, they had 3 guys on the roster with north of 4 home runs this season. Oneil Cruz, Brian Reynolds, along with Andrew McCutchen, and it's not even like Oneil Cruz is sitting for average. You've got all these guys like Alexander Canario, Cruz, who I mentioned before, Henry Davis, Jared Trollo. You go down the list of guys hitting for a 215 or lower, and it's absolutely rampant. You do have Isaiah Kiner-Falefa hitting about a 275. Nick Gonzalez, in a small sample size, has been hitting at 300, but not a lot there. And for the Mets, this has been a little bit of a better lineup because, they are in the top 10 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game, and Juan Soto, after he had a early season swoon, has really busted out of it. Up to 19 home runs, 390 on base. That's what you pay him that money for. Francisco Lindor has been playing through injury. He, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, all between 15 and 18 home runs. Alonso, north of a 380 on base. Lindor has been able to move the line as well. a few of the guys like Brett Beatty towards the bottom of the lineup, Tyrone Taylor, you need a little bit more of them, but all in all, a relatively solid lineup. But I will say for the Pittsburgh Pirates, you've had a bullpen that has been able to do a relatively solid job recently. David Benner has gotten his ERA down below a 3. He's looking like the guy that we saw a few seasons ago. You've had the likes of a Dennis Santana be able to give you sub 3 ERA. Isaac Manson has been solid. And I will say for Bailey Falter, not any sort of strikeout artist, 5.4 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he's giving up 1 home run per 9 innings. It's down to about 3.3 walks per 9. I really like the way that he's coming to form a 3.59 ERA this far this season. I do think that that's going to help with the under, along with the Pirates not really being able to score. So I did set my total at 80.7, liking the under and a plus 130 or higher, like the Buccos on the money line. 953, 954 on the betting board. The Slam Diego Padres are on the road against the Cincinnati Reds, and yes, we are in Cincinnati. Who's on to Andrew Abbott getting the start for them, and Randy Vasquez goes for San Diego. San Diego is anywhere between plus 128 to a plus 135 underdog, minus 144 to minus 157. That number on Cincinnati. 9.5 is the total. The over is minus 120. The under is even, and right now with that initial FanDuel opener, right now you're getting plus 125 on the run line of the Cincinnati Reds. I would be needing to get a little bit more there, as I did set the Reds on the money line at a minus 146. If we could get to a plus 145 or higher, which we're getting close on the Padres, I would be willing to dive in there. Andrew Abbott, I do think is due for a little bit of regression, despite the fact that he has been very rock solid this far this season for Mr. Andrew Abbott. His strikeouts per 9 rate is above a 9. And he's really cut down on the walks as well, only giving up about 2.4 walks per 9 innings, 179 ERA compared to a 338 fielding dependent. That's a sign that we might see things going downward, but he has allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in pretty much all but 2 of his starts this far this season. Meanwhile, for Randy Vasquez, it has been a little bit rough for him, as our good friend and Mr. Vasquez doesn't have a bad ERA at a 360, but he's doing for quite a bit of regression as well. 551 fielding dependent, 5.1 strikeouts to 4.2 walks per 9, nearly 1.5 bombs allowed per 9 innings. He is really doing this thing, smoke and mirrors right now, but he is backed up by one of the better bullpens that you're going to find in all of baseball. For the San Diego Padres, they do find themselves a top 10 team with regards to bullpen ERA overall for the campaign, and as a matter of fact, they entered into Friday number 3, even with Robert Suarez having a few blown saves over the last few weeks. You still have these guys like a Jason Adam, Adrian Morejon being able to give you a sub 350 ERA. Sean Reynolds has actually been a nice find in this bullpen as well. You've got a lot of mix and match guys that have done a nice job holding down the fort. David Morgan comes to mind, and for the Padres, they've needed it because it's been a rather pedestrian offense this season. For the Padres, they're right around about league average in terms of runs per game. True of guys, Gavin Sheets, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., who've all been able to give you at least 12 home runs this season, and Machado's really doing a nice job getting on. He's hitting for darn near 300. Luis Arias hitting just below a 300. You expected a little bit more out of him. Jackson Merrill, not a ton of power, but he's hitting at 300 as well. But it's been the issue has been the catcher spot with Martin Maldonado, along with Elias Diaz, along with some of these mix and match outfielders like Brandon Lockridge, Tyler Wade. They have not necessarily been able to give you a ton. And for the Reds, the big trepidation that you do have is outside of Ellie De La Cruz, nobody else on this roster has been able to give you a double-figure amount of homers. Now you're getting something out of Gavin Lux along TJ Friedel, both give you north of a 350 on base, and Friedel's up to 8 home runs. Matt McClain has 9 bombs, but again, hitting at the Mendoza line 200. For De La Cruz, 55 RBI, 20 stolen bases. He's doing a little bit of everything. And for the Cincinnati Reds, this is a bullpen that has been right around about league average. They had to send down Alexis Diaz to the minor league level because, man, that was not great for him towards the beginning part of the season, to say the least. And Emilio Pagan doesn't have the world's worst ERA, but you just never know when he's going to give up an untimely homer. But like so Brent Suter, Tony Santillan, Taylor Rogers have been able to give you sub 335 ERA. So it is a very interesting scenario. In this case, I'd be willing to go up to about a minus 146 on the money line. On the other side, like I said, right now we're seeing this in that neighborhood, about a minus 144 with regards to the Reds. I would be rather laying a chalkier money line with the Reds rather than taking a look at the run line. So we'll be looking there, and on the 9.5, so I total 9.7. I like the over. 955, 956 on the card. The Arizona Diamondbacks are playing us the Miami Marlins. Sandy Alcantara is on the bum for Miami, and Brandon Pfaadt looks to battle for Arizona. Arizona a minus 140 to a minus 150 favorite. Plus 130 to plus 132 is that number on the Miami Marlins. 8.5 is the total. The over is minus 120, and the under is even. And I'm going to be looking to lay the run line of the Arizona Diamondbacks. I set them on the money line at a minus 206. Right now, you're able to find that run line line price at north of a plus 130. I was willing to go to a minus 107. I recognize that for Brandon Pfaadt, things have been very much less than tremendous for him thus far this season. He overall for the season is rocking an ERA of a 5.49, but that just dropped to 4.09 at home. And at home, he's giving up 0.75 home runs per 9 innings. And for Sandy Alcantara, the fielding independent is closer to 4.70 compared to a 6.69 ERA, but he's still giving up 4 walks per 9 innings, a little bit north of a 1.2 home runs per 9. Credit to the Miami Marlins. They were able to get that sweep of the San Francisco Giants over the early part of the week, but I just don't know if it's necessarily sustainable with a Miami Marlins lineup that is currently in the bottom 4 in the big leagues in terms of home runs out of per at-bat basis. They've been a little bit better with their offense away from home rather than at home, but you only have 2 guys on the roster with north of 8 home runs. That'd be Augustin Ramirez along with Kyle Sowers, who are both between 11 and 12 home runs apiece. Now, Xavier Edwards is doing a great job moving line north of a 360 on base. Got a lot of guys sitting in that neighborhood about a 250 to 255. Eric Wagaman, Otto Lopez, Liam Hicks has been able to move line for the team as well. And Jesus Sanchez, Dave Myers, these guys find a way on, but again, that power is really lacking. And then you had a bullpen that has been not great to say the least. Tyler Phillips has been able to get his ERA down below 4, as has Ronnie Enriquez. Anthony Bender has been solid, but I mean, these guys like a Lake Bakar who come in long relief have really been blowing games for this bunch and for the Arizona Diamondbacks, man. This has not been a great bullpen to say the least. They're currently in the bottom 6 in the big leagues themselves in terms of bullpen ERA. Shelby Miller, Jalen Beeks have been able to give you a sub 3.55 ERA, but when you have to rely upon the likes of Juan Murillo along with Ryan Thompson, they're kicking the tires on Anthony DeSclafani, these guys with a 4+ ERA, that is a little bit untenable. So I do think that you're going to be able to get quite a bit of run scoring in this game. I'm going to be willing to roll with the Arizona Diamondbacks at a big plus number on this run line, especially with the fact that you do have a Diamondbacks team that has been a top 4 team in terms of runs per game. Corbin Carroll's right now on the injured list, and Eugenio Suarez dealing with a little bit of an injury as well, and Suarez up to 25 home runs this season, but even if neither of those guys play, which I think that there's a chance that Suarez goes in this game, you've got Josh Naylor sitting at 300. Ketel Marte of the Marte Parte, 15 bombs, north of a 400 on base. Geraldo Perdomo is moving the line. Alec Thomas has been able to do a solid job getting on base as well. These guys are very much mix and match. They find a way on. They've got some good power, and I do think that the Diamondbacks get to Sandy Alcantara and draw some walks. I did set my total at 9.1. I like the over and the run line of the Diamondbacks. 957, 958 on the betting board. The Colorado Rockies are on the road. They're facing off against the Milwaukee Brewers. Quinn Pricer is on the bump for the Crew. Antonio Senzatella is on the bump for the Colorado Rockies. The total on this game is 9. The over and the under are both at minus 110. And with the Colorado Rockies, find them at between a plus 183 to a plus $2 price, and between minus 225 to a minus 235 is that number on the Brewers. If you're looking to lay a run out with the Milwaukee Brewers, right now seeing that between about minus 115 to a minus 120. I was willing to go up to about a minus 150 on this number. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Now, for Quinn Pricer, not necessarily a strikeout artist. He's getting fewer than 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Has still been giving up 3 walks per 9, but he's been doing a much better job recently. For our good friend Mr. Pricer, his ERA overall for the season hovering in that neighborhood about a 3.61, but I mean the fielding independent, even though it's a little bit higher than that, it's getting lower and lower because he has been a guy that has been able to keep the ball in the air, giving up just 1 home run per 9 innings, and he goes up against a guy in Antonio Senzatella is rocking a 6.48 ERA. Now, he's not giving up necessarily a whole bunch of deep balls, but still, 13.8 hits per 9 innings. Does go up against a Brewers team that is averaging about 3.6 runs per game at home compared to 5.6 away from home. I still don't know where that split is coming from, but for the Brewers, they do a nice job with their small ball. You've got a quartet of different guys who will be able to give you at least 10 stolen bases as far this season. You're able to get that Jackson Trios, Frelick, along with Bryce Terang, and you've got plenty of guys that are doing a solid job with regards to on-base percentage. For the Milwaukee Brewers, this has not been a team that has been slugging out a bunch of bombs. They have been in the bottom 8 in the big leagues in terms of home runs out of per at-bat basis, but I mean, a lot of these guys I mentioned, Terang, Frelick, William Contreras, Christian Yelich, Jake Bowers, all these guys between about a 339 to a 355 on base. You do have Yelich up to 15 home runs. This offense has really come and gone with him. Rhys Hoskins, Jackson Trio, both up to 12 bombs. Trio needs to give you a bit more than a 283 on base, but all in all, things are looking relatively solid for this unit. And for the Milwaukee Brewers, it's been a bit mix and match in the bullpen. They got off to a relatively rough start to the season. Yopai himself and Spiguero were so good for them last season, and well, they just gave them absolutely nothing this season, but you've got Abner Uribe as a nice sort of a versatile guy that is posting up a sub 250 ERA. Trevor McGill has been good in the bullpen. He's been able to give you a sub 3 ERA. You've gotten some good innings as well out of Nick Mears, so I really do like the way that this bullpen has been able to fortify itself Flip side, you've got a Colorado Rockies team that does have a few guys like Jimmy Harrigan, Jake Bird, Victor Vodnik, who'll be able to give you a sub-4 ERA, but I do have a whole bunch of question marks with regards to this lineup. Even though they were able to bust out and have multiple 10 spots over the last 2 weeks on the road, and Hunter Goodman on the road has been able to give you 10 home runs this far this season, it is still a Colorado Rockies team that is dead last in the big leagues in terms of road on base percentage. It is a sub-275, and there's just so many guys on this roster that they're just incapable of being able to hit on the road. Like, you've got all these guys I list off hitting a 200 or lower when they are away from home, as you got that out of Ryan McMahon. You've had Michael Taglia, along with one of your new additions in Mr. Brenton Doyle, just not being able to give you a whole heck of a lot of that. Jordan Beck has been hitting more like a 221 away from home, albeit with 6 home runs, but I mean, it's been up, down, all around with these guys. Orlando Arcia is hitting at 216 away from home with a 237 on base, so I do think that for the Milwaukee Brewers, they do a nice job shutting down this Colorado Rockies team, and that's a big reason why I did set my total at an 8.8. I'm going to be liking the under in this spot, and I do like the Brewers laying run half on that run line. 959, 960 on the card. The Atlanta Braves play out to the Philadelphia Phillies. Jesus Luzardo is on the bump for the Phils, and Spencer Schwellenbach is on the bump for the Atlanta Braves. The Braves are between minus 148 to a minus 157 favorite, between plus 128 to plus 138 is that number on Philadelphia. 8.5 is the total. The under is minus 120, and the over is even. And with the Philadelphia Phillies, I did set them as a bit of an underdog here. I've set them at a plus 137, so we'll see how this line moves, but I am right now seeing that plus 138. That would be my minimum buy point on them. For Jesus Luzardo, I recognize that he had that no good, very bad, terrible run where he had given up 4+ runs in 3 out of 4 starts, and he had, for a 2-start stretch, 20 total runs given up. That said, he's been able to really refine himself, and if you look at the just positivity that he should be doing for, one of the, shall we say, most positive pitchers in all baseball. 408 ERA, 278 fielding dependent, 0.7 home runs allowed per 9 innings, still getting about 10.5 punch-outs per 9, looked really good in his last start, 6 2/3 innings scoreless against the New York Mets, and never really experienced this velocity dip. Meanwhile, for our good friend and Mr. Spencer Schwellenbach, he's doing a nice job of being able to keep things out in front of him. He's only allowing 1.5 walks per 9 innings, 1 home run per 9, 321 ERA, 340 fielding dependent, so he's been rock solid there, giving up 300 runs or fewer in 4 out of his last 5 starts, but with his Atlanta Braves lineup, even though Ronald Acuna Jr. has been able to go scorched earth since coming off the injured list, 9 home runs in his first month of the campaign. He's been able to give you an on-base percentage that is north of a 450. You do have a bunch that has been still hot and cold with Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris, both hitting below a 240. Not necessarily give you a lot of on-base, not necessarily give you a ton of power. Austin Riley hitting for about a 270 with 12 home runs is rock solid. Marcell Ozuna has been able to find a way on with a 378 on-base. And then you've got the catchers in Drake Baldwin along Sean Murphy, both being able to give you 9 home runs apiece, but Baldwin giving you a 355 on base. We'll say for the Atlanta Braves, this has been a top 8 team in terms of bullpen ERA ever since May 1st. That's even with the big giant collapse that we saw a few weeks ago against the Arizona Diamondbacks, with the Dodd-father, Dylan Dodd, Dylan Lee, both being able to give you a sub-3 ERA. Aaron Bummer has been relatively solid in this bullpen. The big issue has been Rossio Iglesias. He has been a terrible closer for the team thus far this season, and on the flip side, you've got yourself a Philadelphia Phillies team that they themselves have been a bottom 8 team in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. Other than Ryan Kirkering, you really don't have anyone in this bullpen that is able to give you a sub-3.5 ERA. Matt Strahm has been having a little bit of a rough season. These mix and match guys like a Joe Ross, Jordan Romano, they have been having their issues, but you do have a guy in Kyle Schwarber who's able to take over a game. He's been supplying the team with 24 home runs, north of a 375 on base, and even though he's the only guy in the roster with 10 plus home runs thus far this season, you've got plenty of guys that are finding a way on base. Trey Turner, Alec Boehm, Nick Castellanos laying at least a 280 for this unit, and you've had Yohan Ross at the bottom of the fold really not give you anything, so you're going to need to get a bit more of something out of some of these more ancillary guys, especially with having Bryce Harper currently on the injured list, but still, JT Realmuto, after a rough start to the season, he's been able to find a little bit more, and I do think that this plus number is getting a little bit extreme on Luzardo and company. I did set the Phillies at a plus 137, so plus 138 or higher, looking at that money line, and did set my total at an 8.4, so you're at the 8.5. I'm liking the under, 961, 962 on the card. The Athletics are on the road against the New York Yankees. Clark Schmidt is on the bump for the Yankees, and JP Sears goes for the Athletics. The Athletics do find themselves as a underdog of anywhere between plus 198 to a plus 206, and between minus 228 to a minus 250. That number on the Yankees, the total is 9, over and under, both at minus 110, and really like what I'm seeing out of Clark Schmidt. I did set the New York Yankees on the money line at a minus 229. I'd be willing to go up up to about a minus 116 in terms of laying a run F on that run line. Right now we are seeing that initial run line over at FanDuel, which obviously have the most rough ones that I've ever seen, at a minus 126. So we need that to lower just a little bit, but when it's all said and done, do anticipate being on the New York Yankees on that run line. I think we should be able to get a minus 115. And for JP Sears, he actually began his career with the New York Yankees organization. He was a part of, I think that it was the Frankie Montas deal, and for Mr. JP Sears, just allowing way too much contact in general. He's been doing a solid job in terms of command. His walks per nine rate is only 2.1, but he's allowing 2 home runs per nine, 5.44 ERA, 5.30 fielding dependent, and he has given up 3+ runs in now 3 out of his last 4 starts, so really getting lit up blaze there. Now he, much like so many of the Sacramento starters, they've actually been quite a bit better when they've been on the road rather than at home. This season, 4.62 ERA on the road, 6.68 ERA at home, but still on the road giving up about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings. And you do have a guy in Mr. Clark Schmidt who I've really been impressed with this season. He's always been, in my opinion, relatively league average pitcher, but coming into his own, a sub-3 ERA. He's been getting some relatively good swing and miss stuff, 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, 0.8 home runs per 9, so the soft contact is being induced, and he has given up 0 runs in 4 out of his last 5 starts, going at least 6 innings in all 4 of those starts, and he's backed up by a bullpen that's rock solid. Luke Weaver is back after he was dealing with a little bit of an injury. He, Yuri De Los Santos, Tim Hill, I'll give you a sub-3 ERA. You've also been able to get some good production as well out of Jonathan Loaizaga. Obviously, Devin Williams has been a little bit of an issue, but you do like to see that for the New York Yankees. And for the Yankees, they had a offensive funk a few weeks ago, and it was really long-lasting, but I do think that they're going to be able to bust out of here in this series against the Athletics, doing this prior to knowing what they did on Friday, but Aaron Judge continues to be Aaron Judge, north of a 460 on base, 28 home runs. Trent Grisham is flying at 350 on base with 15 bombs. Jazz Chisholm, ever since coming off the injury list, he's been hitting darn near 300. He's up to 11 bombs. Ben Rice has been obviously a little bit rough in terms of move line and getting on base, but still has 14 home runs for the team. And for the Athletics, it's been up, down, all around with regards to the lineup. Brent Rooker, Tyler Soderstrom, a combined 30 home runs thus far this season. And Nick Kurtz, how about him getting a home run every about 14 or so at bats? Lawrence Butler is moving line, hitting for a 325 with regards to on base, and Jacob Olson entering into the day on Friday, hitting a 345 is remarkable. But also have an Athletics team that's currently dead last in the big leagues in terms of their bullpen ERA. You've got one guy in this bullpen that has really been, in my opinion, reliable. Hogan Harris, he's giving you a sub-4 ERA. Everyone else has, at the very minimum, if you've made at least 8 appearances, posted up an ERA that is at least a 4.8. Mason Miller, Tyler Ferguson, TJ McFarland, all these guys are having a relatively rough go of it. I think that allows the Yankees to be able to put up a pretty big number in this spot and take it to JP Sears. So at a minus 115 or better, going to be looking at the Yankees run line. Did semi-total at a 9.2, so I'm also taking a look at this 9 over. 963, 964 on the card. Got the Minnesota Twins on the road against the Detroit Tigers, as Casey Mize is on the bump for the Tigers. Bailey Ober goes for Minnesota. Minnesota is an underdog of anywhere between plus 122 to a plus 130. Meanwhile, minus 140 to minus 150, that number on Detroit. 8.5 is the total, over and under both at minus 110, and I did set Detroit as a minus 140 favorite. We'll be willing to go up to a minus 147 on that money line. I do think that Bailey Ober is known for a little bit of positivity, but throughout his career has always had a little bit of propensity to give up the deep ball, especially when he has been on the road. And as far as the season, 7.2 strikeouts per 9 innings, but allowing the 1.8 bombs per 9. 4.90 ERA, 4.90 fielding dependent. For Mr. Bailey Ober has given up at least 4 runs in each out of his last 4 starts. Just absolutely rough there. And what else has been rough has been this Minnesota Twins bullpen recently. Ever since May 1st, this has been a bottom 6 team in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. And this despite the fact that they've got some really good top-end guys. You've been able to get good production out of Yohan Duran, Danny Kalum, who just came off the injury list, Louis Varland. These are 3 guys who have been able to supply you with an ERA that is well below a 250. Meanwhile, Cole Sands, he's been pounding a lot of Sands. He and Griffin Jacks have north of a 4 ERA. Both of these guys have just not been able to give you a ton in general. Brock and Roll Stewart has been relatively solid. And for this Minnesota Twins lineup, you've got Byron Buxton, who's right now supplying you with 17 home runs, north of a 340 on base. And then you've got a lot of guys that don't necessarily give you a ton of power, but they're finding a way on. You've got Harrison Bader, Ty France, Trevor Larnach. I'll give you between about a 325 to a 335 on base. Larnach has been able to give you 12 home runs, but these 2 guys, and Buxton along with Trevor Larnach, are the lone 2 guys on the roster with the double-figure amount of bombs. Cody Clemens, 9 home runs and 118 at-bats, but a little bit of an all-or-nothing hitter, hitting for only about a 220. Matt Wallner, since coming off the injury list, has given you a big, giant nothing burger as well. And then flip side, you've got a bunch in the Detroit Tigers that has been a top 6 lineup in terms of runs per game. Trio of guys: Gary Carpenter, Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson have all been able to give you at least 14 home runs this season. Green is supplying nearly a 300 average. Javi Baez is doing a nice job of being able to move the line as well after he had so many years where he was just looking so rough. He, Zach McKinstry, Dylan Dingler have all been able to do a solid job here with Baez, hitting about a 290. McKinstry give you about a 355 on base. Gleyber Torres, not a ton of power out of him, but he's been able to give you 385 on base. If you look at the overall bullpen numbers for the Detroit Tigers, they've been a relatively league average bullpen all season long, but a lot of this has been utilizing bulk guys and things like that, and the top guys have still been the top guys for this bullpen. Brent Herter, who you're able to utilize as an opener, Tommy Kahnle, Chase Lee, Will Vest, these are all guys give you a sub 275 ERA. Brendan Enfield has been a little bit of an issue, but all in all, I do like what I'm seeing out of this bullpen as well. For the Twins, I do think that they're going to have a tough time catching up to Casey Mize as well, who has been dealing with a lot of injuries throughout his early MLB career, but does seem to be really finding himself. For Mize, you know that his command is going to be relatively solid, and while he's not like going to be completely blowing you by or anything like that, he's only getting about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, 2.3 walks, 1.3 home runs allowed per 9 innings, 288 ERA, close to about a 385 fielding pennant, but has allowed 1 or 2 runs in each out of his last 4 starts, and I think that he goes out there, gets the job down here. So I do like the Detroit Tigers on the money line. I did set them in that neighborhood of a minus 148, and with regards to this total, I just don't know if the Minnesota Twins are going to be able to do their part with it. I'm going to be in on this total under. I did set my total at an 8.4. 965, 966 on the card. The Tampa Bay Rays are on the road going against the Baltimore Orioles as Zach Eflin hopes to not be Eflin awful for the Orioles, and Zach Little hopes to come up big for the Tampa Bay Rays. Rays do find themselves as a very slim underdog, anywhere between even money to minus 108. Meanwhile, between minus 107 to minus 115 is that number on Baltimore. 9.5 is the total. The over is minus 115, and the under is minus 105. And for the Orioles, I set them as the underdog of a plus 102, so being able to get a minus 102 or better with the Rays, which I'm finding some even money out there, I'm going to be willing to take a shot here. Now, I know that for Zach Little, he has been giving up a lot of hard contact in general for Mr. Little. Well, he has been coming up very big in the way that he has been giving up home runs this season, as he is numero uno with that regard. He has allowed this far this season 22 home runs, but he still has a sustainable 378 ERA by 14 fielding independent, but he's only allowing 1 walk per 9 innings. As a matter of fact, he has allowed 11 walks and 22 home runs per 9 innings this season. Not getting a lot of swings and misses, right around about 6 or so strikeouts per 9 innings. And for Zach Eflin, he's been very much the same way this year, only he's got a lot more with regards to his ERA, and he's been giving up a lot more 2-run, 3-run shots, 2.2 home runs allowed per 9 innings, 1.6 walks per 9 innings, 6.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. So, you've got a pair of guys that are relatively equals with regards to the starting pitching, in my opinion, but the Tampa Bay Rays right now are just a more complete team, especially with Junior Caminero, Brandon Lau being able to get loud for a combined 36 home runs between these two guys. Are both hitting above a 255, and then additionally, Jonathan Aranda has been able to give you 400 on base. I know that Jose Calabria is not hitting for a ton of average, but the 29 stolen bases have been very impressive. You do have a few guys that have been a little bit rough with regards to this lineup, like Cameron Misner, Taylor Walls, Danny Jansen, really the entirety of the catcher spot, hitting at 220 or lower, but they also have a Rays team that ranks in the top 5 in the big leagues in terms of their bullpen ERA. Just so many guys that you're able to mix and match with, providing a sub-3 ERA. Garrett Clevenger, Eric Orze, Pete Fairbanks, Manuel Rodriguez. These guys have been able to do a really good job with that regard. And for the Baltimore Orioles, it's been a bullpen that has been all sorts of rough, even with Felix Bautista being one of the better closers they're going to find in all of baseball. You've got a lot of guys that are rocking well north of a 375 ERA. We'll say Sir Anthony Dominguez, Gregory Soto, not two of them. They're actually providing about a 340 ERA. They've been a little bit better recently, but you've had Andrew Kittredge come off the injured list, be rough. You, Matt Bowman, both supplying north of 4 ERA. Sino Perez had hit the injured list, and I think that they just DFA'd him altogether. That was not great, to say the least, and these mix and match guys have not been amazing. Yannier Cano, don't you know, he's up to about a 475 ERA, and for the Tampa Bay Rays, they have to go up against a lineup that hasn't been necessarily so great. For the Orioles, bottom 10 team in the big leagues with regards to runs per game, do have a pair of guys towards the top in Jackson Holliday, Gunnar Anderson, between 8 and 9 home runs apiece. You've got Cedric Mullins really giving you some good wood with regards to the 12 home runs, but now is sitting at 215. We've really seen the regression since the first month or so of the season. Ryan O'Hearn has been that main guy to be able to find a way on 385 on base. You get back Jordan Westberg, you get back Colton Cowser, neither of these guys have done a ton this year, but that should be able to help them out moving forward. But that said, I do think that the Tampa Bay Rays do a nice job being able to put this on lockdown and get the job done at even money or better. I like the Rays on the money line, and it's up until 9.3, so here at the 9.5, I like the under. 967, 968 on the betting board. The Seattle Mariners are on the road. They're facing off against the Walker Texas Rangers. Brian Wu says woohoo to another start, and right now it is all to be determined who's going to be on the bump for the Rangers, so this is a game that is presently off the board. The projections say Coomer Rocker is going to be getting the start, and if that's the case, I'd be sending the Seattle Mariners at a minus 143, so we will lay up to a minus 142 there, plus 144 or higher. Looking at the Rangers, and set a total to where an 8 or less, I like the over, 8.5 or higher, the under. If you do indeed get Coomer Rocker, as we know, this guy could be unstable, he could be a little bit just shaky. But that said, he's been able to come into his own a little bit more over these last few starts. Right now for the season, he's posting up a 6.68 ERA, but still has given up a combined 2 earned runs over the course of his last 10 and a third innings in his last 2 starts. Now those 2 starts came against the White Sox and the Pirates, 2 bottom 6 lineups out there in all baseball, but has looked a little bit better there, and he is going to be backed up by a bullpen that does rank at the top 10 in the big leagues in terms of ERA. You've been able to get a lot of guys who've been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. Luke Jackson, along with Robert Garcia, have been some relatively nice finds in this bullpen. Hobie Miller has been able to give you good innings. John Armstrong can be neither here nor there, but overall they've been able to do their job, and the part of this team that has not done their job has been the lineup, as for the Texas Rangers, bottom 5 team in the big leagues with regards to runs per game. Wyatt Langford has been able to give you 13 home runs, but you've got all these guys. Jock Peterson, who's currently on the injured list. Marcus Semien, Jake Berger, throw in there as well. Adolis Garcia, we're all hitting at 232 or lower. Not necessarily supplying you with a lot of power. And now Corey Seager has been a big issue. Since coming off the injured list, he's been hitting darn near 200, so that's been a big giant issue for this unit. And for the Seattle Mariners, you've got big jumper Cal Raleigh, who's right now on pace to set a American League record for most home runs in a season, entered into the series with 32 bombs. J.P. Crawford has given you about a 390 on base. Recognize that you're not going to get a lot of on base out of Rowdy Tellez, but Julio Rodriguez or a Polanco have all been able to give you 11 home runs thus far this season. Polanco and Rodriguez both hitting about a 250 thus far this season. You've been able to get some relatively good production as well out of Miles Mastroboni, give you about a 330 on base, albeit without really any sort of power line. For the Seattle Mariners, this has been about a league average team with regards to their bullpen. You've got a pair of guys at the top that have been really good. Matt Brash along with Andres Munoz, both of these guys supplying you with a sub 125 ERA. Gabe Spire has been a good long guy with a sub 3 ERA. Carlos Vargas, Edward Pizarro, nice mix and match pieces as well. So I do think that for Brian Wu, he's going to be set up for success. And for Brian Wu, his command has been really good. He's been giving up less than 2 walks per 9 innings. Not some sort of strikeout artist, but the swing and miss stuff has not been bad this far this season. He's getting about 8.3 strikeouts per 9 innings, only allowing about 1.2 bombs per 9, 312 ERA, 359 fielding independent. So circumstance we're at a minus 142 or better. Looking at the Mariners, plus 144 higher, the Rangers, and then 8 or less like the over, 8.5 higher, the under. 969, 970 on the card. The Toronto Blue Jays are on the road against the Boston Red Sox. Lucas Giolito is on the bump for Boston, and Chris Bassett as the hook, line, and sinker for the Jays. And the Jays do find themselves anywhere between minus 119 to minus 126 favorites, and between even money to plus 109. That number on Boston with 9 being the total. The under is minus 115, over is minus 105, and for the Red Sox, I did set them at a minus 122, so I like them on the money line. Lucas Giolito I recognize as not necessarily had the world's greatest season, but recently he's really been able to round into form. For Lucas Giolito, overall for the season, he's rocking a 4.53 ERA with 1.4 home runs allowed per 9 innings, but 2 earned runs or fewer in 5 out of his past 6 starts. He's been able to do a nice job here, and they've needed it with the Boston Red Sox because you trade away Rafael Devers, you have Alex Bregman at the injured list. That certainly causes a little bit of a power outage for the team, but certainly with this Boston Red Sox team, you're still able to get quite a bit of production, a top 7 team in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. And even though you've had Roman Anthony really struggle for this team, you could use a little bit more of something out of some of the young guys. You have a guy that has been a big constant in terms of moving line, getting on base, and Abraham Toro, who's been able to north of 285. Rob Refsnyder, when he's gotten at bats, he's been able to do a solid job. David Hamilton has been terrible. You need more out of he and Connor Wong, guys that were relatively solid last year. Both of these guys hitting below the Mendoza line of 200. And Trevor Story giving you a bit more power with 11 home runs, so the less than 280 on base, that's been a bit unsettling. Weiler Abreu, though, he's been able to north of 250. He's been able to supply the team with 13 home runs, and ever since the Devers trade, this team has been able to mix and match. Certainly the lineup has been a little bit down with regards to their production, but still entered into Friday having scored at least 5 runs in 2 of their last 4 games. And for the Blue Jays, this has been an offense that has been able to run to form 4+ runs in 4 of their last 5 games, but they just haven't been the same offense when they've been away from home, about 3.6 to 3.7 runs per game away from home. That is a bottom 6 mark in the big leagues, and it all has to come back to the power. For the Toronto Blue Jays, bottom 17 with regards to home runs on a per at-bat basis. Trio of guys, Bo Bichette, along with George Springer, Vlad Guerrero Jr., I'll give you at least 11 home runs. You've got Ernie Clement, along with Alejandro Kirk, don't call their name, hitting at least a 300. Going back to Guerrero, about a 387 on base. Springer, he's been able to give you about a 360 on base, and you've got plenty of guys finding a way on. Miles Straw's hitting about a 270, Nathan Luke's about a 360 on base, but this has also been a bullpen that has been a little bit up and down. Overall for the season in the upper half of the big leagues, in terms of bullpen ERA, you've been able to have some long guys come in, like a Yariel Rodriguez has been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. Brandon Fisher has been able to do a nice job with about a 225 with regards to that ERA as well. Paxton Schultz, so that's been a little bit of a rough situation. He, Chad Green, Mason Fluharty, all and north of a 3.80 ERA. And for the Boston Red Sox, the bullpen has actually been a big-time saving grace for this team. They've been traditionally one of the lesser bullpens in the big leagues, but Aroldis Chapman continues to give you north of 11.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, a sub-2 ERA. We've seen a little bit of regression with Brandon Bernardino, but so he, Greg Weiser, Luis Guerrero, along with Justin Wilson, have been able to give you a sub-3.40 ERA. You've had Garrett Woodlock as a long guy start to act up a little bit, but he's still doing a nice job keeping the ball in the yard. Has been able to give you some good presentable innings, so I like what I've seen out of him moving forward as well. And for Chris Bassett, overall for the season, he's been able to do a pretty solid job of locking it down, about a 3.65 ERA, feeling dependent more around about a 3.40 as he's only giving up 1 home run per 9 innings, north of 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, but things have been a little bit more shaky for him on the road. For Mr. Bassett, his ERA goes up by north of a full point, 4.91 ERA, 1.3 home runs allowed per 9 innings, and with that Blue Jays lineup just not producing a lot of offense, I do think that the Red Sox here get the job done. Did set the Red Sox at a minus 122, so I like their money line, so I tell it at 8.9, so at the 9, I'm in on the under. 971, 972 on the card. The LA Dodgers are on the road against the Kansas City Royals as Seth Lugo goes for the Royals and Shohei Ohtani is on the bump for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are between minus 160 to minus 170 favorites, between plus 138 to a plus 145. That number on the Royals. 9.5 is at all. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105. And for the Dodgers, I'm going to be willing to lay the run line here as I was willing to go up to a minus 118. With regards to that run line, right now we're seeing that initial FanDuel opener at a minus 104, and you have to expect that you're going to get a lot of Ben Casparis in this, as in the first few starts that Shohei Ohtani has had this season, Ohtani has went 1 inning, so he probably gives you a little bit more than 1 here, but I'm not thinking that he throws a ton, but Ben Casparis has been that bulk guy. He's been solid, 3.25 ERA, 254 fielding opponent with just a half home run allowed per 9 innings, right around about 9 punch-outs per 9. But here's the big kicker. You've got a Kansas City Royals team that entered in the day on Friday averaging less than 2.8 runs per game at home. That's dead stinking last in the big leagues, and you just have not been able to get a lot of power out of this team. 0.9% of their at-bats are yielding a home run at home. That's less than 1 in every 100. Vinny Pasquantino, Bobby Witt Jr., a combined 21 home runs. Both of these guys hitting solidly. Pasquantino, 270, 280 for Bobby Witt Jr. with 20-plus stolen bases, and Miguel Garcia hitting for north of 300. He's been able to do a nice job moving the line, giving you 8 home runs, but after that, you just don't have a lot of power. You've got 4 guys on the roster right now with north of 4 home runs this season. Jonathan India hitting about a 240 has been a disappointment. Jack Caglione has been not giving you much. He, along with Nick Lofton, since coming up to the big leagues, both hitting below the Bedell's line of a 200. Now, what has been a saving grace for the Kansas City Royals has been this bullpen. It has been a top 10 team with regards to their bullpen ERA. You got a pair of guys, Lucas Ursadge, Carlos Estevez, that have been able to give you a sub 3.25 ERA. You've also been able to have Daniel Lynch give you a sub 2.50 ERA. You've had Steven Cruz come in there, hold down the fort. Even John Schreiber has been pretty solid as well, but now you have to face off against a Death Star LA Dodgers lineup that is currently number 1 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. I mentioned Shohei Ohtani before. Well, that guy in Shohei Ohtani, he just continues to hit home runs, 28 home runs, nearly a 400 on base. You've got Will Smith getting jiggy with it. He's been able to give you north of a 400 on base. Mookie Betts has been a little bit down for his standards. You know that he's going to rebound. Andy Paz, Teoscar Hernandez, 30 home runs between the two of them. And Max Muncy all of a sudden has been able to get white hot. Overall for the season, a 375 on base and 12 home runs, but you just take a look at what he's been able to do over the last 3 days. Well north of a 4 on base after a rough start to the season. He's really been able to rebound, and I do think that though Shohei Ohtani is not going to be long for this game, he's going to be supported quite well. And Seth Lugo has been a pretty solid starter himself, not necessarily getting a whole bunch of swings and misses. He's getting fewer than 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, a 2.93 1.93 ERA, just 4 runs allowed across his last 4 starts. He is giving up, though, north of 1.3 home runs per 9 innings. The walks have been still sustainable, but they're a little bit up from where they were a season ago. Do think that the Dodgers do take it to the Kansas City Royals at a minus 117 or better. Looking at that run line of the Dodgers, and some I told it at an 8.7 because the Royals flat out aren't inning. I'm in on the under. 973, 974 on the card. The Chicago White Sox play OC San Francisco Giants. Robbie Ray says hit Pepper Ray to another start, and you've got Adrian, don't call him Doogie Howser on the bum for the White Sox. White Sox are an underdog between plus 138 to a plus 147, minus 158 to minus 169. Very nice. That number on San Francisco, 8.5 is the total. The under is minus 120, and the over is even. And for the Giants, I did set them on the money line at a minus 174 if you're looking to lay a run half with them. And I'm once again doing this with a FanDuel opener here, but right now you're going to be finding that in that neighborhood about a minus 105, and I'd be willing to lay that. I'd be willing to go up to a minus 109 for Robbie Ray. His command is still relatively shaky, still giving up about 3.5 walks per 9 innings, but has really been able to reduce on the deep ball that has killed him throughout his career. Going into the season, was giving up about 1.4 home runs per 9 innings. He's been able to cut that darn near in half. How about 0.9 home runs per 9 innings? Still getting about 10 strikeouts per 9, has been very stable there. And he's given up 3+ runs in total in each of his last 3 starts. A lot of those were unearned runs, though. I do think that the Giants should be able to support him a little bit more here in this game, especially going against a Chicago White Sox team that does rank in the bottom 5 of the big leagues in terms of runs per game. Miguel Vargas has been able to do a nice job as he's been able to supply the team with a double-figure amount of homers, and got a few guys like Lennon Sosa, Chase Meredith, along with Edgar Quiero, hitting above a 265, but just not a lot of power here. Andrew Benintendi has been able to get up to 9 home runs, so a little bit of credit there. You've got Luis Robert, though, just be a complete nightmare as Andrew Vaughn, who they had to send down to the minor league level, Joshua Palacios, Josh Rojas, Matt Diaz, a whole bunch of guys hitting a 215 or lower, and for Robert, you just expect a little bit more out of him. It is a White Sox bullpen that does rank in the bottom 10 in the big leagues in terms of their ERA, but you've been able to have some nice pieces be able to show themselves. They did have to take Mike Vasil out of the bullpen and make him a little bit more of a starter, but I mean, the likes of a Grant Taylor, Steven Wilson, Tyler Gilbert give you a sub 330 ERA. That's encouraging. Jordan Leisure, he's been having a little bit of a rough go of it, and Wilkeman Gonzalez posting up about a 450. That's not necessarily great either. And on the flip side, you do have a Giants team that's number 1 in the big leagues in terms of their bullpen ERA. Camilo Udval, Eric Miller, along with Tyler Rogers, throw in there as well. Randy Rodriguez, all being able to give you a sub 3 ERA. For the Giants, you've had Jung-Ho Lee start to regress a little bit, but still hitting a little bit north of 250. Not necessarily a ton of pop in his bat, but still is doing a nice job being able to give this team some production. You've had Eloy Ramos supply about a 360 on base. He's been giving you 13+ home runs this season. Matt Chapman has been spending some time on the injury list, but while he's been on the injury list, Casey Schmidt, 360 on base. He's been very solid. William Adames needs to start to pick it up a little bit. 9 home runs and a less than 300 on base is not what you pay all that money for, but Mike Yastrzemski about a 345 on base. I do think that the Giants should be able to go out there, get the job done against a guy in Adrian Hauser who's actually had a relatively nice season throughout his career. I've never necessarily been an Adrian Hauser fan, but he's been able to keep the contact relatively soft. 220-70 ERA, more like a 344 fielding dependent, but has allowed just 2 home runs across his 6 starts and 35 2/3 innings. Not a strikeout guy, 6.5 strikeouts to 3.3 walks per 9 innings, but he should be able to do a nice job just being able to keep things sustainable in general. I did set my total here at an 8.2, so here at the 8.5, I like the under, and I do like that Giants run line. 975, 976 on the card. You've got the Cleveland Guardians playing us to the St. Louis Cardinals. Miles Michaelis is on the bum for the Cardinals, and Slade Sassoni goes for Cleveland. Cleveland is a minus 115 to a minus 121 favorite. Between even money to a plus 105 is that number on St. Louis. 8.5 is the total. Over and under both at minus 110, and for Sassoni, I did set him on the money line at a minus 131. I'm going to be willing to lay with Sassoni. He's had a few hard contact issues this season, but he really seems to have figured them out. As for this Cleveland Guardians team, it's not the same bullpen as they were a season ago, about league average in terms of bullpenning rates, so they need guys like Sassoni to be able to step up because Emmanuel Clase rocking north of 3.5 ERA. You still have had Hunter Gaddis, Cade Smith be able to supply a sub 3 ERA. Both are giving you a north of 11 strikeouts per 9 innings, and I will say Nick Enright has been able to give you some good innings as well, but for Sassoni, his ERA has dropped to a 3.38 with 5 runs allowed across his past 4 starts. See 1.4 home runs per 9 innings allowed. Still a little bit rough, but he's only giving you about 2.8, 2.9 walks per 9 innings, nearly 9 strikeouts per 9. And for Miles Michaelis, if you look at the fielding independent, it's more than a half a point lower than his 4.31 ERA because he only gives out about 2.2, 2.3 walks per 9 innings, and it's a lot less than a home run per 9, but the ball's just in play a lot against him. 5.9 strikeouts per 9 innings. Good news is he gets a face-off against a Cleveland Guardians team that certainly does not have a lot towards the bottom of the lineup, but those top guys are pretty strong. strong. Jose Ramirez has been able to give you 13 plus home runs. He's supplying north of 300 average. Stephen Kwan hitting above a 300. I keep it. Carlos Santana has been able to give you about a 330 on base, though there's been a little bit of regression there. The bottom of the lineup, though, just needs to be able to give you a little bit more in terms of finding a way on base. Recognize that Kyle Manzardo has 12 home runs this far this season, but you've got he, along with Lane Thomas, Nolan Jones, Wilson, all these guys hitting below a 225, and Bo Naylor is another one of those guys. Got so bad that Brian Rocchio had to get sent down to the minor league level, and for the Cleveland Guardians, I do think that they are going to be able to get some good production on this pitching in general against a St. Louis Cardinals team that they themselves have not necessarily been ripping the cover off the ball. Bottom 8 team in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis, despite the fact that they're a top 10 team in terms of run production. You do have a trio of guys, Lars Nootbaar, Wilson Contreras, Nolan Arenado, between 10 and 11 home runs this far this season, but all hitting at 245 or less. Brandon Donovan, along with Alec Burleson, have been your main guys to be able to find a way on, both hitting darn near 300, but you've had these guys like a Pedro Baez, who's in for the injured Ivan Herrera at the catcher spot, not necessarily give you a ton towards the bottom of the lineup. Victor Scott has been hit or miss and has not given you a ton of power either, and Mason Wynn doing a solid job, giving you about a 325 on base for a Cardinals team that they've got a bullpen that's right around about league average. You've had Phil Matone really do a nice job of being a lock it down. He's been able to give you sub 2 ERA. Ryan Elsley has looked a little bit better recently, but it's still blown 5 saves thus far this season, but you've got from there Jojo Romero, Riley O'Brien, Kyle Leahy being able to give you a sub 3 ERA, so interesting circumstance here. I did I tell it at 8.7. I do think that the Guardians get to Miles Michaelis, and Slade Sassoni has been giving up some hard contact, so like the over and the Guardians on the money line. 977, 978 on the card. The Chicago Cubs are on the road against the Houston Astros, so hold undecided who's going to be on the bump for the Astros, and Colin Ray says hip hip hooray to another start. When I was looking at the early productions, it was supposed to be Ryan Gusto who was going to be getting the start for the Astros, and I set it as a relatively pick'em game if it was going to be Mr. Gusto, as I set the Astros at a minus 102 on the money line, so I'd be willing to go up to a minus 101 there, and frankly, it would just be whoever the underdog is the team that I'd be rolling with, so that's really the philosophy behind this. And then with regards to the total, I did sell my total at 8.7, so at an 8.5 or less, I'd be looking at the over. A 9 or higher, I'd be diving in on the under. You do have a guy in Colin Ray who's been pitching to quite a bit of contact thus far this season, but has been able to do a good job of, for lack of a better term, avoiding the landmines. As for Colin Ray, he's been posting up an ERA that is right around about a 442, the field independent, more around a 476, 2.3 walks per 9 innings, so he's not earning himself, now giving up about 1.6 home runs per 9 innings. That's a little bit less than tremendous, but much of the run production that he's been giving up has been when things have been very, very warm over there at Wrigley Field. That actually goes down to 3 home runs allowed in 27 and 2/3 innings away from home, so more like 1 home run allowed per 9 innings, and he has been backed up by a lineup that has been oh so supreme thus far this season for the Chicago Cubs. They are number 2 in the National League in terms of run production, and got a pair of guys in Seiya Suzuki along Pete Crow Armstrong. We're up to 20 plus home runs thus far this season, and a lot of these home runs are not solo shots because you got a lot of guys that are finding a way on base. Nico Horner hitting about a 295. Ian App, he's got a double figure amount of bombs, north of a 335 on base. You've had Kyle Tucker give you north of a 380 on base. He's up to 15 plus home runs. And then for the Houston Astros, it's been touch and go with the lineup. They've been right around about league average with regards to run creation. Isaac Paredes, 16 home runs thus far this season. He's been very thankful to be out there in Houston, where he's a little bit of a pull hitter. Jeremy Pena is hitting at 325, and Jose Altuve, he's seen a little bit of a dive over the last few days, but overall, he's been able to round into form over the last, we're going to call it 45 or so days, 12 home runs, hitting about a 260. You've got Cam Smith now hitting at 270 as well, and Jake Myers doing a nice job finding a way on, but Christian Walker, along with Yunior Diaz, both giving you less than a 285 on base. That's a bit of an issue, and for the Astros, this has been a very good bullpen all season long. Whether you get Ryan Gusto or if you get someone else, you've got a lot of guys like Bennett Sosa, the Bryants, Brian King, Brian Abreu, Josh Hader, Caleb Ward, these guys being able to give you a sub 325 ERA. Even Sean Dubin has been relatively good in this bullpen as well. And if you do indeed get Ryan Gusto, his strikeout numbers have been relatively solid, as he's been able to give you 9 plus strikeouts per 9 innings. Just been a case where he's been giving up a little bit too much hard contact for Mr. Gusto. He has made 11 starts thus far this season, a few bulk appearances as well, 10 punch outs per 9 innings. He is though giving up north of 1.2 home runs per 9 innings, a little bit north of 3 walks per 9, 4.62 ERA. So do have your issues there. And for the Chicago Cubs, this team has been a top 3 team in the league in terms of bullpen ERA ever since May 1st. You've got a lot of guys that have come from out of nowhere. Even someone like Chris Flexen, who's been a little bit of a long guy. He, Daniel Palencia, Drew Pomerantz, Brad Keller. They've been able to give you a sub 3 ERA. I do think that runs out sooner rather than later. So interesting circumstance here. Pretty much whoever becomes the underdog, I'm going to be looking at them on the money line. Set the Astros down to minus 102, and then 8.5 or less, liking the over, 9 or higher the under. And we wrap things up with 979, 980 On the card, the Washington Nationals hit the road. They're facing off against the LA Angels. The Professor, Kyle Hendricks, goes for the Halos. Mike Soroka is on the bump for the Nationals, and the Nationals do find themselves as a mid-sized underdog here. You're going to be getting them between plus 108 to a plus 115. Meanwhile, you're between minus 125 to a minus 132. That number on the Halos, 9 is the total. The over is between minus 110 to a minus 120. Under is between even at minus 110. I did set the Angels on the money line at a minus 136, so I'm going to be willing to roll with them. Even though it's been a rough season for Kyle Hendricks, it's been an even worse season for Mike Soroka. 5.06 ERA. He's getting 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he's been giving up 1.7 home runs per 9. Walks haven't necessarily been bad, but just all the hard contact is really starting to add up. He's given up 3+ runs in 4 out of his last 5 starts, and while Kyle Hendricks has had a relatively rough season in general, he's had a few relatively decent starts recently. That start 2 starts ago against the New York Yankees, he was able to find it there. 43 ERA, 494 fielding dependent, more like 1.5 home runs allowed per 9 innings. He doesn't get as many strikeouts as Soroka, but same amount of walks, right around about 2.5 walks per 9 innings, and has given up 300 runs or fewer in each of his last 3 starts. I don't think that that's going to be duplicating itself, as we saw on Friday, both of these teams just being able to erupt and score a whole bunch of runs. And for the Washington Nationals, they're averaging only about 3.8 runs per game when they're at home. On the road, they've been averaging more like 4.7 runs per game, as James Wood continues to give you good wood. 20+ home runs, 375 on base. The on base percentage for both of these teams is a little bit lacking, as you do have some of these young guns who have been, shall we say, up and down, like Adele and Lyle. It's going to need to give you a little bit more for Washington, but you can tell that there's some pop in the bat. You've been able to have CJ Abrams at the top, give you double-figure amount of bombs, 360 on base. And though Josh Bell's hitting below 200, goes deep, 11th home run season yesterday. And for the Angels, this team entering in the series, worst in terms of on-base percentage in the league at home. But I mean, you've got a lot of guys that are going yard. Joe Adele is now up to 18 home runs, and he's been one of the hottest hitters in all baseball over the last few weeks. He's now up to a 310 on base. Logan Hoppe, very happy that he's giving you 15+ home runs. Not so happy about the 268 on base. They've got these guys like Lamont Wade Jr., Kevin Newman that aren't giving you a lot in terms of the lineup itself, but Nolan Schunoll, 365 on base, and then you've got guy in Taylor Ward who's got 20 home runs at a 280 on base. Even Mike Trout is only hitting about a 230, and both of these bullpens have been all sorts of brutal. For the LA Angels, among guys that have seen at least 10 innings thus far this season, only one guy in the bullpen has been able to give you a sub-4 ERA. That'd be Under Strickland, who's actually been very rock solid for this team. And then you just go down the list of guys, and a lot of these guys have been a little bit better recently, but I mean, Kenley Jansen, Brock and Roll Burke, Jose Fermin, Connor Brogdon, they've all been having a rough season. And for the Washington Nationals, outside of Kyle Finnegan, this has been a very much work in progress bullpen as well. You've had Andrew Chafin be able to give you some solid innings as well, but likes of a Zach Brzezinski, Eduardo Salazar, Jackson Rutledge, you've got a lot of guys in this bullpen that are providing north of 5 ERA. Cole Henry has been going down the toilet bowl a little bit as well, so do think that this is going to be a game that sees a lot of scoring. I did somebody tell a 9-4-4, so I like the over. I'm with the Angels. We'll lay up to a minus 135 on that money line, and that'll wrap things up for the Saturday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to John Bollman, does great work over at Baseball with Bowman, along with RotoWire. You join me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season on this podcast. I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.